The digital revolution does not only involve the emergence of a new generation of radically new artifacts like AI applications and robots, but involves the emergence of a new world. To explain what I have in mind, um, I would like to start with an example. The European Commission invests in the design of a digital model of planet Earth called Destination E, or Destination Earth, that can predict the effects of climate change and the impact of adaptation and mitigation strategies. Now, if I say that the digital revolution involves the emergence of a new world, we can easily imagine that Destiny E constitutes a new virtual world next to the physical world we experience in our daily lives, whether it is the world of the social media or a digital twin of planet Earth. And yet, the digital revolution has a more profound impact, as it also disrupts the physical world we experience in our daily lives. The example of Destiny E can make this clear. If the ambition of Destiny E is to, and I quote here on the slide also, represents a real breakthrough in terms of accuracy, local detail, access to information, speed, and interactivity, then the assumption is not only that the digital twin of planet Earth is data-driven, but that also the physical Earth is data-driven, fully accessible via our algorithms, and can be fully represented by the digital image. The accurate simulation of the Earth system by Destiny is said to be informed by rich observational data sets of the Earth system and through the dynamic interaction between the physical Earth system and the digital twin of the Earth system. The impact of climate change on the physical Earth system can be predicted, solutions to address climate change can be tested, etc. The example of Destiny E shows that the digital revolution not only introduces a new digital world next to the physical world we experience in our daily lives, but presupposes the redesign of the basic structure of the world as a whole, namely as a data-driven world in which the physical and the digital world are fused. While in previous times the world consisted of relatively stable material entities that were characterized by dichotomies like the physical versus the virtual, the local versus the global, the natural versus the technological, human versus non-human, these dichotomies erode in the homogeneity of data as a substrate of all material entities we encounter in the world. Now I speak about a world of data, as data is not so much a characteristic of physical entities we encounter in the world, like the material of the chair that you are sitting on, but concerns a metaphysical structure that characterizes the whole of being, including human existence in the world. The world of data concerns a kind of unity that provides a new coherence to the environment, in which, for instance, the physical data of a cow or a plant can be accessed via digital twin as accurate representation of the real cow or plant. Only because of this fusion of the physical and the digital in the world of data, digital technologies can claim to accurately represent physical entities. And this raises all kinds of questions for philosophers, because philosophers engage in an ontology of the present, and they ask then, for instance, what characterizes this digital world, and how is the physical and the digital correlated, and where does this design come from? Now, I extensively introduce this topic for you because in the philosophy of technology, there is a tendency to focus on artifacts. and to neglect these type of questions. What is called the empirical turn is often opposed to the traditional philosophers of technology like Heidegger and Ellul, who tended to abstract from concrete technologies and to reflect on the essence of technology. Am I not committing to the same type of abstraction in my previous slides? Now, on the one hand, I have to say that I agree with the criticism of Heidegger, for instance, and believe that the empirical turn in philosophy of technology is important to enrich the philosophical debate. It is important to acknowledge and to consider and analyze concrete technologies and how they mediate experience, for instance. On the other hand, we run the risk to throw the baby out with the bathwater if we limit ourselves to this empirical analysis of technological artifacts and how they mediate experience, and neglecting these metaphysical phenomena in the digital age. It is, I believe, also important to consider these type of phenomena in our research, because I believe that societal concerns about new and emerging technologies like AI are not only focused on issues like privacy of an app or question about control, but raises all kinds of social, political, and ontological questions regarding instrumentalization, the replacement of the human, that has nothing to do with the individual artifact, but has to do with this, what I call metaphysical issue. So we have to rehabilitate an understanding of uh, philosophy of technology that rehabilitates the empirical, but the empirical beyond the pure focus on the artifact and what we can derive from it, and the empirical beyond the abstract level of the essence of technology, and to consider both the physical, the innovation process leading to new technologies, for instance, and the metaphysical, the redesign of the world in the digital age. So I would like to concentrate now on the question, where does the redesign of the world in the world of data come from? Or who or what invented this world of data? To answer this question, it seems obvious to point at the human as inventor of digital technologies. Does the digital world reveal humanity as the world-making power? Now, we can admit that technology is decisive in the emergence of this digital world, but philosophers like Marx already questioned whether technological evolution is best understood from this human perspective, or is better understood like natural evolution. In fact, technological evolution has to be seen as determined by previous stages of development, interdependencies with other technological developments, and by intrinsic universal technical tendencies which are independent of humanity. So technology is decisive, but not primarily a human category, as philosophers like Simondon or Leroy-Gourhan, for instance, already indicated. The human condition is included in the emergence of the digital world. And because the human cannot be seen as this subject of world-making power, we explore another hypothesis, namely the idea that technological innovation itself constitutes the digital world. So this is the move from an anthropocentric to a technocentric conception of the digital world, by the way, without excluding the role of the human, as we will see. Can technological innovation account for world production? That is then the main question. But in order to explore this question, I first have to explore a preliminary question, namely what we actually mean with innovation. And here it is important to introduce this topic as well, because in the philosophy of technology, there is a tendency to equate technology and innovation and to talk about technological innovation. But we have to distinguish the two concepts, because with technology, like in the first original understanding of Mumford, for instance, technologies are understood in terms of tools or machines or artifacts. And the interesting thing is that innovation has a double meaning. On the one hand, it concerns a process leading to new to the world tools and machines, and innovation can mean this artifact that comes out of it. And we can argue that technology as a concept tends to have this substantial meaning of the outcome of the innovation process, while innovation has this process dimension of emergence or evolution that is important to acknowledge. And based on this, we can also say that all technology is the product of innovation, but that innovation doesn't necessarily lead or produce new technologies. You can also have an innovation of a political innovation, or you can think about a social innovation that doesn't involve any technologies. So I believe it is important to acknowledge the difference between technology and innovation to start with, because innovation enables us to have this more evolutionary process dimension that is involved in the emergence of new technologies. Inspired by the work of Karl Marx, the economist Joseph Schumpeter conceives innovation in terms of creative destruction. In history, radically new innovations are created, like the first diesel engine in locomotives. But the creation of new innovations extends beyond the artifact, according to him, because it destructed the existing industry of steam engines and created a new market for diesel engines. Just like more recently, the new to the world innovation of digital cameras destroyed the industry of analog cameras and created a complete new industry of photo editing and storage programs. So in this regard, he uses the notion of creative destruction to understand that innovations create a new market. In his case, he is an economist, and destructs an existing market, and this process is acknowledged in his notion of innovation. This notion of creative destruction is interesting to consider because it shows two aspects of technological innovation that are missed by traditional philosophers of technology. And Jacques Ellul, for instance, argues that technology is a rule-governed system of laws, rules, and routines that we humans have to follow. But innovation as creative destruction enables us to understand innovation as rule-creating and rule-destructing system. And another example, Martin Heidegger argues that technology is primarily the familiar and the known, the hammer that I always know how to handle, for instance, in building a house or building a table. The concept of innovation as creative destruction shows that innovations are not necessarily primarily the known, but the unknown and the unfamiliar of the radically new to the world innovations that have to be taken into account. So at least these type of process-related and evolutionary perspectives already challenge the traditional understanding of technology by for instance, philosophers like Heidegger. But you see here also on this picture, that is a sort of general picture of Schumpeter's idea, is that on the ontic or physical level, you see that there are inventions like the steam engine or the combustion engine, and that this is not only a history of technology, but that these inventions create waves, economic waves, according to Schumpeter, that destruct and create new markets. So here you see already that according to Schumpeter, we can say innovation operates at two levels. Although Schumpeter is primarily an economist, we can extend the idea of economic waves to the socio-economic redesign of the social world due to radical innovations like the steam engine. For instance, the invention of the steam engine gives rise to a new socio-economic world in which railway industry appears. The emergence of the steam train, for instance, enabled people to travel more easily and quickly from rural areas to the city center. It also gave rise to cultural phenomena like the Christmas holiday, including Christmas trees, cards, and gifts. At the same time, railroads enabled the transport of vast amounts of raw materials to industrial plants and mills to produce the building blocks of industrial societies in the wake of the Industrial Revolution. As a consequence of this increased social mobility, the urban bourgeois grew in size and began to overshoot the nobility in power, number, and prestige. A new working class emerged who worked in factories, but caused also social and political tensions due to unhealthy labor conditions, increased economic inequalities and employment. This is a quote from Feeks 2019. This example shows that radical innovations are insufficiently understood if we look at them only at the level of new-to-the-world artifacts, because they also redesign the economic and social political level we were living. Till now, we only talked about the impact of technological innovations on the economic and the social political world, but not yet about the metaphysical world that I introduced in the beginning of my lecture, and how innovations redesign the metaphysical structure of the world. Another example can make clear why radical innovations also impact this basic structure of reality. Galilei, for instance, himself did not invent the new-to-the-world innovation of the telescope, but was the first to systematically use the new technology. This invention extended for the first time the human senses to the universe beyond the vision or the world as we knew it. And it opened a complete new reality beyond our everyday world. At the same time, it changed nothing on the level of characteristics of artifacts or the natural environment that we experience, but it disrupted the geocentric orientation of our living and acting in the world and created the heliocentric orientation of human existence in the world. So the meaning of the world in which we live and act, the meaning of the world, namely as a star among stars, changes. And it includes also the nature of human beings. Namely, the human becomes itself an astral being, as if this human has a new Archimedean point outside of the earth and looking at it. What the example of the telescope makes clear is that disruptive innovations like these telescopes change the rules of the game, or in more philosophical terms, disrupt the geocentric world and create the heliocentric world. I talk about the creative destruction of the heliocentric world, as the telescope changed nothing at the level of humans and beings in the world, but at the same time the appearance and meaning of the world changed completely, as we are no longer the center of the universe, but a rock rizzling through space. Something similar can be said about the digital revolution we experience today. On the one hand, digital technologies presuppose already that the basic structure of reality consists in data as substrate of algorithmic calculations, as I have shown earlier. The plant and the cow, the human immune system, or planet Earth is a rich data set that can be accurately represented by a digital twin. This basic structure of reality as data is not limited to the digital world as opposed to the physical world. For instance, an online world next to the offline world, but the physical and the digital world converge. This convergence or fusion is not neutral, as if the digital world combines best of both worlds. But the digital world becomes dominant to the extent that only the data of the plant and the cow, the human immune system, or the planet Earth are taken into consideration in the digital twin. And everything that resists algorithmic calculation is neglected, if not denied at all. So there's a kind of circularity in the relation between digital technologies and the world, as the invention of digital technologies are, on the one hand, grounded in the world of data, and it presupposes reality as a data set. But on the other hand, it is only by establishment and dissemination of these technologies that this world of data becomes dominant. Through this circularity between digital technologies and the world of data, the world as such becomes a data-driven ecosystem as substrate of algorithmic computation, in which classical dichotomies like analog and digital, online and offline, real and virtual erode in the interconnectedness of digital networks in which everything is interconnected and interdependent. In this shift of our understanding of the basic structure of reality, also notions like the spatiality and temporality of beings in the world change. As the Internet of Things and plants, animals and humans in digital networks are no longer dependent on fixed physical proximity, location and embodiment. Finally, notions like the singularity of human existence change, as data is never singular but always appears in a multiplicity in which the pattern of data points, not a singular data point, is relevant. So what I have hoped that I have shown with these examples is that innovation does not only or not primarily concern new artifacts that emerge in the world, like an AI-based system, but also that they disrupt the socio-political and the metaphysical world in which we live and act. It is not the case that the human is the primary agent in the emergence of innovations, but he or she is involved in the creative destruction of this world in which we live and act. And we have to consider these multi-level phenomena that constitutes the world, and we have to consider the process of world construction and world destruction. And this means that a philosophy of the digital world requires a philosophy of innovation that adheres, on the one hand, to the empirical turn notion of considering concrete, new to the world artifacts, disruptive technologies, at what I call then an ontic level of new to the world beings like AI-based systems, but at the same time that we have to engage in a processual turn to consider the determinants in the evolution of these type of technologies in the course of technological evolution. And we have to look at this ontological or metaphysical level to see, to accept and to acknowledge the impact of these innovation outcomes on beyond the practices that technicians or engineers are working in, namely the social, political, and the ontological, metaphysical worlds. And we have to acknowledge that world constitution is a process of creation and destruction, and we have to think about how this process has to be understood from a philosophical perspective, because the creation and destruction of an artifact is not necessarily the same as the creation and the destruction of a metaphysical phenomenon. So these are the areas where research has to focus on if we really want to take this phenomenon into account. And I want to argue that it is important to look at this innovation at this from this broader perspective, because I believe that it is really important that we look at artifacts like apps and robots and consider social ethical issues in this. This is what is in this picture called level 1. So it is important to consider privacy and transparency and liability issues. But we limit ourselves too much if we focus only on this level. We have to extend it to this second and third level of ontological or metaphysical issues, because I believe that if society is resistant against surveillance capitalism, you have to consider this social political level of a social political economy, for instance. If people are afraid that they become replaced by AI, whether this is a promise that is true or not, it is important to consider these metaphysical structures about what it means to be a human, what is the difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence, all these type of issues. This brings me to the last point of my presentation, namely that we are living in a world of multi-crisis, talking about, for instance, climate change. And we need a new sustainable world, sometimes called the post-Anthropocene world, in times of climate change. And what I have tried to do is to open a new perspective on the technological evolution or the evolution of innovations, because all innovation potentially destruct and construct world, also the technologies that we are currently facing, like AI. And we have to be clear and frank about this. Current technologies are often part of the problem. If we look at the rise of industrial technologies in the wake of the Industrial Revolution and the enormous amount of environmental impacts these technologies had after the Second World War, we can imagine that currently the climate crisis is partly caused by the use and exploitation of the Earth by technologies. But we can argue, based on the insights that I provided, that all innovations either reinforce or entrench the world, like big tech companies, for instance, are safeguarding their markets at this moment, but can also destabilize and emancipate the world, for instance, if they engage in this process of creative destruction. And that means that, in principle, the world is an open-ended towards the future. So no reason for determinism or anthropocentrism or even pessimism, as the world is open-ended towards the future. And in times of crisis, we are urgently in need of a new world, and one way to achieve this is via innovations. That is a topic I can talk about also, but not given the time frame I have today. Now, I said that the role of human creativity is not that the human is the primary subject of innovation or the primary subject of technology, but it is also not the case that the human is passive or has no role in this whole process, because the role of the human is to be a relational phenomenon in a relation with technologies in the current world, so is involved in the invention, dissemination, and further development of disruptive technologies and innovations. So the task of humanity is to actively experiment with the emancipatory potential of new and emerging innovations in which the post-Anthropocene world can be constituted in the future. I would like to thank you very much for your attention. I would like to thank my team because I am working with a great team of researchers who all are interested in these type of issues. So thank you for your